Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need, get over the fear, and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, Michael Quarles, podcast number 12. On today's podcast, I wanted to talk about your prospects and the list that makes up those prospects and where to find them, how to put them together, what to do with them, those kinds of things. And when I look at prospects and the lists that we have, I look at two groups. I'm looking at the primary list, and then I'm looking at all those sub-lists. So let's talk about the primary list for a second. And I am a flipper, so what I'm doing is I'm buying a piece of property. I am offering or accepting an offer from a seller at 60 cents or 70 cents below the as-is value. I am then reselling that property to 100% of value. So I need a property that has at least 30% equity in it in order to market to it. So I want to look at from a primary list perspective. I'm looking for an equity owner. Someone that has at least 30% equity in their property, all the way up to 100%, so it could be a free and clear. I want someone that has owned their home for at least 4 years or longer. So I don't want to market to people who just bought a house 2 years ago or 3 years ago. 4 years seems to be a nice trend as when people start thinking about and actually start selling property. So I want 4-year ownership or longer. I want to make sure that everybody or all the property on the list are single family residences. So I don't want duplexes, I don't want triplexes, I don't want fourplexes, I don't want apartment complexes, I don't want condos, townhouses, mobile homes, or vacant lots. So I'm only wanting to concern myself with single family residences. Now, if I was another type of investor, like a buy and hold person, maybe the duplex, the triplex, the fourplex would be fine, or the multi-family apartment complexes are fine. For my investment strategy of massive investing, I want single families. The other characteristic that I want is I want between 1 and 3 bedrooms. Now, in some areas, the assessor doesn't report that data, so I won't be able to have a bedroom filter. The reason I want between 1 and 3 bedrooms is because I have found that's where my buyer buys. So we're not selling 4 bedrooms and 5 bedroom properties when we're out there flipping property. We're typically taking that 1 bedroom, that 2 bedroom, that 3 bedroom, that low end home, doing something to it. In some people's case, they're rehabbers. In my case, all I do is I buy it at a discount and I sell it at full value. So I'm not doing anything to it, but I still am probably going to sell my property to another investor who's going to pay cash for the house and decide that they want to rehab it. They may at that point, after it's rehabbed, decide to resell it, or they may keep it as a rental. And either one of those things are fine, because all I'm doing is I'm buying at 60 cents on the dollar. I'm selling it at 100 cents on the dollar. If someone wants to turn the property into more value because of a rehab, that's great. I'm not going to go to Home Depot and be in Home Depot at 6:30 every morning getting paint and paintbrushes and toilets and sinks and 2x4s. Done that, been there, done that, don't want to do that anymore. The other component that makes up my list are home values that are less than the median sales price in an area. So we know when we look at values, we have listed prices, and we have the average listed price, the median listed price, the average sales price, and the median sales price. The median sales price is most always going to be your lowest of your 4. So median over average, median is how many houses. So if I have 1,000 houses, 500 of them were below median and 500 of them were above median. So what is that 1 or 2 houses right in the middle? What was that house? And it's over. Instead of averages, we're just an average, because if you had, let's say, 10 houses and 4 of them were $2 million houses and 6 of them were $50,000 houses, your average would be way off kilt and wouldn't give you back what you need to get back. So always use your median. Um, and so I like single families, 4-year ownership, 30% equity or greater, 1 to 3 bedrooms, under median. The other 2 characteristics I like is I want to exclude corporations and trusts. So properties that are held in trust or in properties that are held in an LLC or a corporation, an entity other than mom and pop. And the reason that I like to do that, and I have found much success doing that, is that I want to talk to mom and pop. I don't want to talk to corporate America. Corporate America is a little bit harder to deal with, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit. I'm not going to get as good a deal dealing with a corporation as I am, and I'm talking typically. I'm not talking always. On average, as I would a mom and pop that has a need to sell a property. So now, if I look at that group, and then inside of that group are 2 groups. So I have my primary market of equity owners. Inside of that group, we have 2 groups. One is our absentee owner, which is an owner who does not live in the property. And the other one is an owner-occupied owner. So that means that's someone that does live in the property. So we have that equity property. We have either an absentee owner or owner-occupant. When we look at absentee owners, there are 3 types of those as we start building our lists and who we're going to market to. There are out-of-state owners. So if I have a property in California and my owner lives in Texas, they are an absentee out-of-state owner. Probably the furthest away from the property that someone lives who has motivation, the higher their motivation level is, because they're going to have expenses associated to coming back to that area, either fixing that home up that just was vacant or selling that home, and all those costs of travel and time and energy. And so they'll mitigate that with a lower sales price and cause it to get sold. Your second group, so your first group is your out of state. Your second group are your in-state owners, but out of city. So maybe they have a house in Bakersfield, California, and they live in Sacramento, California, which is about 4.5 hours away. That person is probably your second best absentee owner for the same reasons that the person who lived in Texas is. The third group are your absentee owners that live in the city the property is in. So again, I have my equity owner group compiled of 1 to 3 bedrooms, 30% equity, 4-year ownership, single family homes, under median, no trust, no corporates. I have then into 2 groups, absentees, owner occupants. Absentees are in 3 groups, out of state, out of city, in city. On my owner occupied, we can see 2 groups here. So we have our owner occupied, 65 years or older, who has owned that property for 15 years or longer. And the reason that this is an important group is we know that after ownership of a property for 15 years, there's most likely some deferred maintenance and maintenance that hasn't been done to bring it up to current standards. Because people like what they like, and most people, they won't go in there and remodel their house every 5 years. They like it, they enjoy it, it fits for them, they leave it the way it is, but it might be still outdated. So we go 65 years old, 15-year ownership or longer. So after 15 years, we have this deferred maintenance. Because they're 65 years and older, they're not climbing on the roof and fixing things and what have you. So we can pretty much count on that deferred maintenance. But the other thing that we know is that typically people who are in their retirement years do not use their home as a retirement vehicle. So they have money from something else. They have a life savings, they have life retirement, whatever it is. They typically don't need the home. And a lot of these people will want to be moving. The kids have moved out of the house. They no longer need all 3 bedrooms. You know, it's a big house for them now. The neighborhood's deteriorated, it's changed enough. Their kids have moved to another state. The kids want them to come live with them. Maybe they're at the point where they need to have a facility environment where they're moving into a care facility, what have you. But we're at that 15-year ownership, 65 years and older. The other group of the owner-occupieds is everybody else. So when you look at your equity-based lists, you have the characteristics that create the equity, and then you have the side of it that's absentee, which has 3 groups, and you have the side of it that's owner-occupied that has 2 groups. Now, if you can market to everybody that when you create a list is on your list, then you don't have to start subdividing your list and say, okay, which ones do I want to market to? Do I want to market to the absentee out of states? Do I want to do the 65 years and older? Which crowd? So if I were going to say, I'm going to divide it up and I'm going to say I would do this one first, this one second, this one third, this one fourth, this one fifth. If someone asked me that question, I would answer it this way. Most of the time, I would fall forward and say your absentee out of state of the 5 people are your best prospect. Then it's your second best is going to be your in-state, out-of-city absentee is your second best. As we start hitting that third best, we're probably going to have a tie between 3 and 4 with your absentee in-city and your 65 years and older 15-year ownership. And then your fifth would be everybody else that was owner-occupied. Now, let's look at the value differences between your absentee owner and your owner-occupant. And what I mean by value differences is how many of those folks, or what's the likelihood of those folks responding to a marketing piece or responding to sell you their house. And I would absolutely say that you'll have that more absentees will sell their house from a percentage perspective than owner occupants to an investor, because they understand the investment world, where an owner occupant would sometimes be more likely to use a realtor and go to the MLS listed house side. But let's look at, but are absentees better than owner occupants? Because here's what happens with your absentees. Everybody's marketing to them. I mean, there's a lot of people marketing to absentees. I mean, everybody preaches market to absentees. So they're getting not just your marketing piece, but everybody else's out there that's in your area. So you're one of many. That's not a bad thing, because we need our peer group to tell our market this is an option for you over using a realtor or somebody else. But they're still getting bombarded. And our job is to be there when they need us. And because they may get 10 postcards the same week, how do they pick us? Some will pick us because they like our postcard and they like what we said on it and what have you. With the owner-occupieds, they're not getting bombarded, so there's fewer people telling them they have options. And as they learn that they have more options, because there's fewer of them, our chances of success are greater from a percentage perspective. So you really have to weigh the two. Do you want to market where everybody's marketing, where there's more opportunity? Or do you want to market to where there's less opportunity, but more likelihood of that opportunity calling you? And it's very, very similar from how many calls start coming back in. Now, your owner occupants, that first call is going to be a little slower because we have to start touching the folks. Where with our absentees, they've been touched and are being touched by others. So we're within that touching process. So understand, like, if someone came to me and said, Mike, I want to send out 1,000 pieces of mail or whatever, what do? I have, 1,000 absentees and I have 1,000 owner occupieds. Which ones is what I do? I would say, again, going back to the first, 1 through 5, absentee out of state, absentee out of city. Then I would really carefully consider owner occupied 65 and older 15-year ownership, and then go to that absentee in city, and then the other. So really wisely consider where you're going to market and pick the one that fits you. Now, what we don't want to do is have too short of a marketing plan and too long of one. So, because marketing is all about testing. So when we send out a piece of mail, I want you to or whatever it is that you do, I want you to market to somebody for 90 days, for a 90-day cycle. So you're gonna hit the person however you're hitting them, however you're touching them. Yellow letter, zip letter, postcard, charm postcard, text postcard, pictorial postcard, FedEx package, whatever it is. You're gonna hit them for 90 days. Now I would hit mine every 3 weeks. I'm a little bit aggressive. Some of you won't be as aggressive as I am. Shorter than that, it's too much. But longer than every 6 weeks is too far apart. So you're going to hit them over for a 90-day period. You're going to learn what works for the market. And the other thing you're going to learn is if you work for the market as well. Because if you get 90 phone calls from absentee owners and have not bought at least one house. If I got 90 phone calls from absentee owners, I would buy 10 houses. But if you get over 90 and you haven't bought a house, you're marketing to the wrong prospect group. It does not fit you. And so I say that because it's important that at the end of 90 days that we reconvene and we go, okay, did I buy a house? Why didn't I buy a house? It was because maybe my marketing message wasn't correct. Maybe I just didn't like the prospect group. If we were successful and we bought those 10 houses, or at least we bought one, and then we want to continue, then we can either continue. We should be able to add to our marketing budget because we've had some success. So we want to increase that. We should have set up some systems and had some systemization going on so we can take the inbound calls and take it from lead generation, lead capture, and lead fulfillment. So we should know at the end of 90 days if we want to fall forward with the same group, increase the amount of marketing we're sending out to that group, or, and here's the big or leave that group alone, not do anything with it. We like the group, we're going to keep touching it. We're not going to increase it, but what we are going to do to increase our marketing is now start marketing to the subgroups. So what are the subgroups? And boy, there's a host of them. So we know that if we're going to buy a property and we're going to flip it, whether we're going to rehab it or just, assign it, wholesale it, or hotel it, it has to have an equity base, which is why we have that primary group made up the absentee owners and the owner occupants. But what about all those subgroups? And so here's, a fast list of some of your subgroups. We have the obituary notices. Those are folks who have passed away recently. The property it isn't necessarily a probate and it hasn't gone into naturally the inherited status yet. And it may be a trust property. So maybe they set it up into a trust. They've passed away. We know that they lived in their home. We can tell that. So we know that resident is now changing hands because of the death, but it may not be necessarily a probate. So that's a marketing group. And then you do have your probates. Now, when you pull your list for probates, we've got to be concerned on one important thing, that the probate has real estate attached. So if you're getting your probate lists and it doesn't say real estate attached, don't buy the list. Only you look at and compile probate lists that have real estate attached to them. Third group are your inherited prospects. Those are folks that didn't go through probate, but have transferred the property to a family member. So they did a family deed, they did maybe a quick claim deed, they did a special warranty deed, but they took it from the owner of the property who became deceased and transferred it to somebody else. Another group. This next group is a great group if you can grab the list, and that's unlawful detainers. So earlier we spoke about absentee owners. So an unlawful detainer is a court action by an absentee owner against the tenant that is living in the property. So they've taken that tenant to court and said, you have to move out. So we know that property is going to be vacant and that absentee owner is having a difficult time with their tenant. So it's an outstanding list if you can grab it. Another list which is really good are divorcees. So those are folks where they were married, they've now divorced, there's a property involved, and in some cases that property has to be sold to pay off both sides. Sometimes they won't. So the divorcees, sometimes you'll market to someone who's going to keep the house, just refinance the house to pay off the spouse. But a lot of times, no, they can't agree on what to do with the house, so the house is just going to be sold. Here we come along and say we buy houses. Another group that a subgroup, are pre-foreclosures. Now, a pre-foreclosure is the period of time that the lender has to initiate and fall through with changing ownership of the property. So someone had a mortgage, they haven't been making their mortgage payment. The lender came in and started the pre-foreclosure process. In some areas, it's a list pending process. In some areas, it's a notice of default process. It really depends on if your area is a judicial or a non-judicial foreclosure. Like I'm in California, we are in a state, and there are very few states that have both, but we can have a judicial foreclosure and a non-judicial foreclosure. And the election of that foreclosure happens at the beginning of when that you borrow the money. So you're electing what fashion you want your foreclosure. Most people do in California a non-judicial because it's easy. It's under a time limit, an NOD status, 90 days, which goes into trustee status, 21 days. Every state's a little different, so know your time periods. So if you're marketing to pre-foreclosures, you're going to market to list pendings and you're going to market to NODs. Very few people will market to trustee sales, which is the second step of the foreclosure process, because the trustee sale stage is so short. Like ours is 21 days. I believe in Texas it's 21 days. So you'd really have to hit them really fast. And we have found that it's not a good marketing dollar to do trustee sales. So prior to the pre-foreclosure are your mortgage lates. So those are folks that we can tell via the credit reporting bureaus that they have a mortgage that's 30 or 60 or 90 or 120 days and greater that is behind in payments but not in foreclosure. So the lender hasn't started foreclosure proceedings, but we can tell that they're 60 days late on their mortgage. I like marketing to mortgage lates when I want to do shorts, and I market that 60, that 90, that 120 days or greater. 30 days, there's still that to recapture that mortgage, that's still such a small amount that they could go ahead and pay that 30-day late payment. But I have found that when we get to 60 and 90 days, 3 months worth of payments is pretty steep for a lot of people. And if they could have paid it, they would have been paying it. And so then it starts to get into the status of, well, I want to market to them because they need to sell a house. The other folks, another subgroup, are your expired listings. Your expired listings are people that want to sell a house or wanted to sell a house. They hired a real estate professional, a realtor or agent or a broker, to list their property on the multiple listing service, and the contract period expired. So maybe the realtor and the seller agreed that that contract would be for 90 days. At 91 days, if the property hadn't sold, then the contract would expire, and the multiple listing services, each one of them out there, would then tell their community of realtors or MLS members that this property is no longer on the market and it has hit what we call a hot list as an expired. Now, the general public, that we don't have access to the expired hot list. However, if we have a working relationship with a realtor or an MLS member, we may be able to work that relationship such that we can have the hot sheet. Or if we're an agent ourselves, that's one of the advantages of holding an agent's license, is being able to see inside of the MLS. Another group that's equally as good as the expireds, because we know the expired wanted to sell their house, they just couldn't. The other group, which is equally as good, are for sale by owners. So those are people that put a sign out in their front yard that says, I want to sell my house. For sale by owner is what they say. Or they put them on the for sale by owner website and market it to the public that way. For me, if I had limited dollars from a marketing perspective, so I couldn't send them out direct mail, I knew they were for sale by owner because, driving for dollars or whatever I was doing, and I see that sign with that phone number, I would probably, being a guerrilla investor, I'm probably going to go park in front of their house, walk up to the door, because I'm always got contracts with me, walk up to the door and buy a house. Knock on it, step back, look up the street, those kind of things. At the very least, I'm going to call the phone number on the for sale sign and set an appointment to do that. If I was getting the list provided to me by a for sale by owner list provider and so large that I couldn't, one, call everybody, or secondly, drive to their house, then I would go ahead and send them something in the mail. I want to buy your house. They're going to respond to you. They want to sell their house, which is why I fall forward and say I'd probably go knock on the door, or or at least call them. And it's not a cold call. I mean, it's a friggin' hot call. I mean, anytime you can talk to someone who you know wants to sell their house, it's not a cold call. It's not even a warm call. It's a hot call. You're making an appointment to go out there and buy the house. Very simple questions. Hi, my name is Michael Quarles with I Buy Houses. We're looking for 3 and 4 bedroom homes in your neighborhood. Or you can go straight to it. I saw your for sale sign. I'd like to come out and make an appointment to buy your house. Great. Keep in mind, we don't look at houses. So don't set an appointment to look at a house. What time tomorrow, 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock, can I come out and buy your house? 2 o'clock is great. Terrific. And before you go out, here's one question you always want to ask. It's important that all the decision makers are there so we can reach an agreement for you to sell me your house and I can buy your house. Will all the decision makers be there for an appointment tomorrow at 2 o'clock? No, my wife doesn't get home until 5. Your wife doesn't get home until 5. Terrific. What time can I come out and see her? It was 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock be better? 6 o'clock will be fine. Great. I'll see you at 6 o'clock tomorrow and buy your house. I appreciate the opportunity. So always make sure you set the appointment, alternate choice appointments. Make sure all the decision makers are there. Don't go out unless all the decision makers are there, and fall forward. The other subgroup are tax liens. So these are folks that in California, I can be 5 years behind on my taxes before it goes to tax lien status, where they're going to sell the property for what I owe on the tax for property taxes. Know your elimination periods for your taxes in your area. I hear almost every day people's success stories buying tax lien property. So it's a good market. The lists are easy to come by. Understand your what it takes to buy them, and if there's any redemption period in your market, and just add them to your list. The other one, and this is going to be a harder one. Some of you may or may not want to do this one, but it's active listings. So when I look at active listings, there's 5 types. And this seems crazy. 5 types. There's new, brand new, just listed property onto the multiple listing service. So it's, on a daily basis, I'd get a list, and you can get the list. It's pretty simple. It's not a hot sheet list, although a hot sheet list would be easier to get. But most multiple listing services, they have a local website that you can go to, and they'll show you all of today's new listings kind of thing. So you just write down the addresses, those kinds of things. The beauty of the just listeds is we know we have a highly motivated person to sell a house. So might as well make them an offer, and I'll get to making them an offer and what qualifies as in order for you to make them an offer in a minute. So that's the first group. The second, the third, and the fourth groups are the same, except for one is all 90-day listings, all 120-day listings, and all 180-day listings. So earlier we spoke about the expired list, which an expired is a contract that a realtor had or an MLS member had with a seller. They didn't sell the property within the period of time that it was going to expire, and it expired. They sent this hot sheet out to all the realtors, and those realtors or MLS members may or may not have shared it. Some realtors will cold call it to get new listings because they know the seller wants to sell. The people I'm talking about in the 90, the 120, and the 180-day people, those are people that may be going to be expired in a day or two. We know that realtors and MLS members, they write 3-month contracts, 4-month contracts, 6-month contracts. Rarely will you ever see a 60-day contract, and rarely will you ever see a 150-day contract. So it's 90 days, 120 days, 180 days. So on my 90-day people, I'm going to pull a list at 85 days. Show me all of the properties that have been on the market for 85 days. I might send them out a letter saying I want to buy your house. They're going to get that letter by the time I pull the list, write the letter, sign the letter, put a stamp on the letter, put it in the mail, or hire a service to do that for me. They're going to get the letter right as it expired, faster than anybody else is going to hit them, because a lot of people wait for the expired list to hit. Now, they may not be expiring at 90 days, but we're still touching them. But we're not going to touch all of them. So I'm going to tell you who to touch in a second. We're going to do the same thing with the 120 dayers and the same thing with the 180 dayers. So the first group are your brand new MLS listings. Your second group are your 90 dayers. Your third's your 120 dayers. Your fourth are your 180 dayers. When you look at these 4 groups, you want to make sure that these groups, whoever falls on this list, is also on your primary list. You know, remember we pulled the list of all of the equity owners, and we divided that list into five. One is your absentee out of state, your absentee out of city, your absentee in city, 65 years and older, and then everybody else, owner occupied. They have to be on that other list. So don't send a letter out to a 90-day MLS listed property if they're not on the list. Now, one of the things you could do, and people have made a bucket load of money, is you can write offers or present offers on REO properties. So an REO property is an MLS listed property that has gone through the foreclosure process. So it went through the pre-foreclosure process of the NOD, 90 days, the 21-day trustee sale status day period, and then it went to the courthouse steps kind of thing where they sell them. No one bought it. It went back to the bank. So now the bank owns it. They've hired a realtor. You know, they sent someone out, they locked it all up, boarded it up sometimes. Then they hired a realtor to start getting offers on it. They've told that realtor in a lot of cases, or that MLS member, we're not going to accept any offers for the first 10 days or 2 weeks or week. That allows that listing to mature on the MLS. So you're going to go in to the MLS and pull lists on all 7-day listed REOs. REOs listed for 7 days. Write offers on those properties. So they're telling you they want to sell because they've hired a realtor. You know they have massive equity because the bank can sell it for $1 if they wanted to. So it's a great thing. 2 final lists. Short sales. Those are people that you're going to find through your pre-foreclosure marketing and your mortgage late marketing. And when you find them, they're going to classify them most of the time as short sales. Those are people that are over encumbered. They owe their lender more than the property's worth. We're going to get the house under contract, and we're negotiate with the underlying lender, and there could be 1, 2, 3 of them. So we're going to negotiate with all 3 if we need to get a reduction on the payoffs at a value that's less than the property's worth that affords you to make money. A little bit harder to do than some of the other groups. Still possible. Love short sales. The last group, and this is a great group, the last group are vacant and abandoned houses. So how do you find those guys? Because there's not really a vacant list or abandoned list, but there kind of is. When you start sending out mail or you start driving for dollars and you start noticing abandoned houses. And so what does an abandoned house look like? Maybe they've got, 7 door hangers on their front door. Maybe they got cobwebs all over the place. Maybe they have piles of newspapers piled up. Grass is a foot tall in the front yard. There's no sign at all that this property is being occupied. Maybe they don't even have a meter for electricity anymore. So if you're driving for dollars and you see these things, you write their address down. Now I would get out of my car. I'd park first, get out of my car, knock on the door to make sure it's not occupied, and then I'd knock on the neighbor's door. One of the neighbors is the security guard for the house. The person that knows the owner or the situation. If I didn't have time or didn't want to do that, I'd at least send them something in the mail. What I'd send them in the mail, I would use first class postage, and I would ask for address correction from the postal service. So I would find the owner's mailing address. But in general, when we're marketing and we find and mail isn't deliverable to the property, in order to find vacants, we would write on the mail piece, do not forward, address correction requested. So you're going to get your mail piece back. It's going to say vacant on it, and it's going to give you the new forwarding address. So now we know that 123 Apple Street is vacant. We now know the forwarding address of someone. So if your model is buying vacants, you're going to take some steps before you find the vacants. You're going to send out a piece of mail, get that mail back. And I would send out a small first-class postcard, get that mail back, or I'd be driving for dollars. You could also scour the MLS, and they'll tell you if you're an agent, sometimes in the agent remarks that it's a vacant property or not. Vacants are good because they're abandoned, they're unwanted, typically. Hard to find sometimes, so you're going to use services like Accurate or some sort of skip tracing company to find those things. But one of the key characteristics for all of these lists that I mentioned before, except 2, and the 2 are the REO MLS properties that are listed and your short sales. So your short sales could be compiled of your pre-foreclosures and your mortgage lates. But pre-foreclosures and mortgage lates could also not qualify for shorts. So understand that as well. So of your obituaries, your probates, your inherited, your code violations, your unlawful detainers, your divorcees, your pre-foreclosures, your mortgage lates, your expireds, your FSBOs, your for rent by owners, your MLS, new 90-day, 120-day, 180 days, and your tax liens. They all have to be on your primary list. So just because you get a list of probates that have real estate and the list is 100 long, you want to take that list of probates and say, how many of the probates are also on my primary equity list? And those that aren't on the primary equity list, we're not marketing to them. They're not a prospect. They can't sell us a house that causes us to make money. Because just because someone has become deceased, if they owe 100 cents on the dollar, they still have to pay the lender the 100 cents on the dollar. So it doesn't make sense for us to start marketing to people that don't have equity. So we hit our group. Remember when I said, continue to hit your first group. As you build your how many prospects you want, you're going to take your subgroups and start marketing to your subgroups who would also be on your primary group. And it's okay that the person gets 2 postcards or 2 yellow letters. One, there's a higher likelihood that they're going to respond to you. So you have your primary group, you have your subgroups. I hope that this helped some of you understand the different and various groups that are out there. And one of the other things I hope is for you to understand that, man, there are a lot of opportunities out there. Find your niche, learn what probates need to hear and do, and how that's all the situation that's involved in a probate. Learn that, learn code violations, learn unlawful detainers, learn the lingo, learn how to prospect and market to these people and talk to these people, how to solve their problem, make it a win-win for everybody, and go out and buy some houses. These are, again, great groups. Your 2 primary or your 5 primaries and all your subgroups. So enjoyed it. You guys have fun. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.